Today we have a very special guest, someone who is nothing short of a legend in the chess world. Susan Polgar is a true trailblazer in the game of kings and queens.
Please join us in welcoming Grandmaster Susan Polgar. She was a top-ranked female chess player in the world by the age of 15, and in January 1991, she shattered records by becoming the first woman ever to earn a Grandmaster title through norms and rating, the same way the men did. She didn't stop there. Susan went on to become the women's world chess champion and even achieved chess's coveted triple crown by winning world titles in rapid, blitz, and classical chess. If that wasn't enough, she has 12 chess Olympiad medals to her name and still holds the incredible record of never losing a single game in the Olympiad competition. It's no surprise that she was inducted to the US Hall of Fame in 2019 and World Chess Hall of Fame in 2023. And she is the only woman to be inducted into both. But Susan's story is about much more than just titles and trophies. She grew up in Cold War Hungary, where she had to fight intense sexism and even government opposition just to pursue her passion. At a time when many insisted that women couldn't compete at the top levels of chess, she proved them wrong over and over, becoming the first woman to qualify for the men's world championships cycle, only to be initially barred from playing, and forcing the chess world to finally open its doors to female players. And now Susan is sharing her incredible journey in a new memoir titled Rebel Queen. It has been called the real-life Queen's Gambit tale, a story of defying the odds from a little girl who wasn't supposed to play with the chess pieces to a woman who became a world champion against all odds. We are absolutely honored and excited to have her with us today.
Welcome. It's an honor to have you here. And perhaps first and foremost, we should start with your book, The Rebel Queen. Where did the story come from?
Yeah, hi, Dina. Hi, Amelie. It's really a great pleasure to join you here. And what happened was in 2019, The Queen's Gambit, not the opening, but the Netflix series came out. After it came out and it was a huge success, I got approached by a lot of media outlets asking me, was that movie based on my life story? There was an obvious parallel in that I was one of the first ones who played successfully against men and became, in fact, the first woman to earn the Grandmaster title. After that, obviously, I told them that, yes, that's very similar. On the other hand, there were plenty of differences as well. The next thing I was told, well, there should be a movie made about your life story, as that's the real story. And as part of that, I talked to friends in Hollywood who were telling me that if I want to have any kind of control on the narrative on how my life story will be told, I should have my memoirs written, and then a potential movie could be based on the book that I'm writing. So that's how it got started around 2020.
Yeah, so The Queen's Gambit was basically, it was based on a fictional character, but it was, in a lot of ways, your life. Did you watch the show? What did you think of it? And do you feel like it accurately kind of portrayed like what it was like at that time as a female chess player?
In some ways, yes. In others, no. It portrayed the sexism that she had to face. Obviously, I grew up during the Cold War in the communist side of the world, while she in America. So in that sense, she didn't have as many obstacles to face as I did. Also, on the other side of things, I was fortunate enough to be born to a loving family who very much supported me, unlike the fictional character of Beth Harmon, who grew up basically in an orphanage and was living on tranquilizers and was taking all kinds of drugs and alcohol eventually. I did like most of it, but what I did not like, I felt it was inaccurately representing that it's normal for a successful chess player. As far as I know, there is no special drug that can enhance chess performance, and the movie seemed to hint that that was part of the reason of her success. So I don't think that part was very realistic. Also, there were some other little details that were not quite realistic in the world of chess, but overall, the parallel was obviously noticeable that a young girl succeeds in a male-dominated field of chess. So that was the main storyline of the series, and that was the main storyline of my life.
And that's kind of what brings us to set the scene for you and for your chess career. When was the first time when you actually realized you could beat men in chess?
Yeah, so the very first time I went to a chess club, playing outside of my home, basically. It was a wake-up call that back then, we're talking about the early 1970s, 1973 in particular, smoking was allowed. So I'm entering the room. It was a room full of smoke and full of men, full of middle-aged and elder men. And I was like, wow, did I get lost? That was my first impression, what am I doing here? No other girls, no women. And soon enough I realized, oh, wow, this is a chess club. This is a place where people do my favorite thing by then. My father was trying to get me a game, to play. So for the first time, I got to play somebody other than him. People looked at him like he's crazy and making fun of him, telling him, well, if you want to get a game of chess with us, just say so. Don't use your little daughter to get a game. People were laughing and ridiculing him that what a crazy idea this is. They've never seen something like that a 4-year-old girl would want to play chess with grown men. Long story short, eventually one of them gave in. So I got to play, and I got to win some of those games. And that, of course, was a big sensation. Nobody expected that to happen. And I started seeing how awkward the situation became also for the men. The other men who didn't play started making fun of the person who lost. And that kind of became the dynamic for the coming years. Men didn't want to play me because they were afraid that if they lose, they're going to be made fun of. And since there were so few women playing and even less women playing well, it meant I had to be trying to play against men. And that created kind of a very weird dynamic in that in some cases they didn't even want to let me play, period. I kept fighting it, and hence the title of my book, The Rebel Queen.
What did female chess look like at the time? I mean, did you know any other women chess players? And I'm assuming there weren't many of them, but or were you kind of just always like the girl in the man's world, so to speak?
Well, there were some women, and in Hungary was a little better than I think in other places. In fact, I was very fortunate that my first coach, other than my father, was one of the former women's champions in Hungary. Women were rather segregated, so to say. Women would pretty much only play among themselves. Looking back, it sounds so strange, right? Practically, I was the first one who demanded that I want to play with a man. Why to separate, I faced a lot of roadblocks and discrimination because of it, and I was told countless times, don't be ridiculous, you can't beat men, you will never be a grandmaster, it's just physically impossible, I was pretty much told. And with the craziest reasons, from saying that the man's brain is larger than the women's, to saying that women can't keep quiet long enough to be good at chess. Yeah, I mean, to the craziest excuses that, and to give them a bit of credit, they really believed that. They genuinely meant it. Men at the time, we're talking about the 1970s and even throughout the 80s, believed that women just are intellectually inferior to men. And even I remember vividly one incident when I was on the team of my chess team, and the legendary Hungarian champion Lajos Portis was on the team, and I was already somewhat accomplished. I was probably around master level already. He came to the back of the bus when we were traveling to an out-of-town team competition and was congratulating me for everything I accomplished up to then, and was telling me that I indeed have a good potential to become a women's champion. But don't kid yourself, there is no way a woman could be a grandmaster or a top player among men. And he meant it in a positive way, saying that I don't want you to be disappointed, set realistic goals. So even people who meant well within my own chess team genuinely didn't believe that it was possible. And I actually used these discouragements as fuel for motivation to prove them wrong. And that's what I encourage anybody out there that is being told you cannot do something. I believe that if you have the passion for something, you want it badly enough, you're willing to work hard enough and long enough for it, nothing is impossible. And that's really the whole message of my book, that I'm showing through my life story how much I had to overcome, how many people told me, no, you cannot do it. And yet, by persevering, by working hard at it, by believing in myself, I proved that yes, I can. And if I could, my story proves anybody can, because I don't feel I'm anything special. My talent, if anything, is not to give up, believe in myself, and work hard towards my goals.
So everyone told you can't do it. And then in 1991, you were the first ever woman to earn the Grandmaster title through Ratings and Norm. Tell us about what that was like, what the reactions were, and how that felt.
It felt amazing, obviously. It was a vindication, a justification for all those people who didn't believe it was possible. And also, I believe it opened the door for the future generations, including my sister Judith, who was the second woman who earned the Grandmaster title. I earned it in January, she did it in December, so still within the same year. And today I'm very proud that there are a few dozen women, I think 42 women, in fact, who have the title. And I think it's really significant that women started believing that it was possible. It's not just that I did it, but it goes really beyond chess even. All women in all different male-dominated fields that have been told the same, whether it's in sciences or in tech, that women are not smart enough to do as well as men. I think I was able to perhaps inspire a bit women even outside of chess. I sometimes jokingly say, when I was a little girl, I was told I cannot be as good, and I was saying, why? These little horses are not that heavy. We're not trying to lift real horses, right? So it's about the intellectual abilities, and I don't think there are any limitations for us women to be any inferior to men.
We're sitting here with the first woman in something that exists, right? So it is, that's definitely something that we want to bring in, like how exceptional it is and how lucky we are to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah. My mom is a chess coach. She's been a chess coach for 35 years. I remember when I was growing up in St. Petersburg, Russia, we would play in that, maybe you've visited, I don't know, Chigorin Chess Club?
Yeah, I think I've been there. Yes.
Yeah. And when I was young, it was, girls under, 8, 10 championships of the city. So it was 2002, 2003. There were still portraits from the old times, like those ones, like here. There were portraits of all women world champions, and there was your portrait on the wall.
Wow.
And they were all black and white. There was Vera Menchik, there was Maya Chburdayidze, Nolga Prindashvili, and there was and it was saying Zhuzha, of course.
Yeah.
And then I was when I was growing up later, I was Susan, who is Susan Polgar? I'm not Zhuzha Polgar. And then, and I was saying for my mom, for my chess coach from Russia, when I send them photos today, hey mom, I'm interviewing Susan Polgar. For them, it's impossible to process. How is that? Because obviously for Soviet local chess players, it's someone who you see portraits on the wall. You don't expect to be seeing them and talking to them.
You talk in your book about all of these different moments where there was sexism that was preventing you from the fact that you were a female, preventing you from achieving the things you would set out to achieve. And obviously everyone who wants to read the details of that, check out the book. But maybe start with kind of the first time you experienced that and when you knew that really you were going to have to fight, not only on the board, but off of it in order to really, become this great chess player that you became.
When I was 4 years old, I started competing. First, I played in the elementary school championship for girls. After winning the district championships, I played in the final of the Budapest championship. And even though I was still 4 years old, I was playing girls who were 9, 10, up to 11 years old in elementary school. And I ended up winning that tournament, and by winning all 10 of my games. So that kind of was a big sensation. The following year, my father felt, since I won so convincingly against the girls, I should be playing with more challenging opponents, the boys. So I started again playing in the district qualifiers and qualified, won those, and qualified to the Budapest championship. To our shock, when we got there to the tournament venue, we were told by the then president of the Budapest Chess Federation that I cannot compete. And we said, but why? I qualified. And they said, well, you're a girl and this is the boys' championship and therefore you cannot play. And when we tried to appeal, and they were even threatening to throw my father down the stairs of the building, it was really dramatic. But that was really the first wake-up call that this will be a fight, and not everybody will take it kindly or allow me to just even try to prove myself. It was very painful. As my father recalls, I was literally crying all the way home. He couldn't console me, and I loved chess enough not to give up, and kept learning and playing and practicing, and eventually I got opportunities, of course, to play against men. Until much later, going years forward, 1986, I qualified myself to play in the Hungarian men's championship final. So this is not the top players of the whole country, right? Men or women. I was the first woman who ever qualified to play the championship in the 100-year history of the championship. It was announced at the beginning of the event that the top 3 finishers will represent Hungary in the World Championship cycle. So I was very motivated to be one of those top 3. So I tied for second, third behind the winner and qualified, got one of those 3 coveted spots. I was so excited, the first woman ever to qualify, until several months later being told that unfortunately FIDE, the World Chess Federation, doesn't allow women to play in the men's World Championship. So that was like a huge disappointment, obviously, that, that those were the times when I felt that no matter what I do, the chess organization's bureaucracy will find reasons and excuses not to let me go forward. And I even, contemplated in giving up. And it's thanks to actually my maternal grandmother who reminded me and putting things in perspective. She, being a Holocaust survivor, said, "Dear granddaughter, if you think this is tough, you don't know what tough is," obviously referring to her memories of horrors in Auschwitz and the Holocaust. And indeed, I put it in perspective, and I came back to the drawing board and continued to work hard to accomplish even further feats in my career.
I think most people would probably at that point just say, I guess it's not meant to be, find something else to do. But eventually, your grandmother's advice, but also you use that as fuel to the fire, it sounds like.
So basically, people ask me about the title of the book, and trust me, I didn't want to be a rebel queen, but I had no choice. By being put in these absurd situations when I was being told that, I cannot play in competitions because of my gender, I just felt it's not just for me, but it's for my sisters and for others coming after me. Somebody has to open those doors. Somebody has to show the chauvinistic man, that yes, women are just as capable. It just, happened organically, so to say, that I was put under these crazy situations that I felt I just had to fight it.
I mean, there's just so many questions I want to ask at the same time, but you had so many fights over and over again with all these chess players and legendary grandmasters, but also different federations and the system, right? You were always fighting against the system. What were some of the most perhaps memorable situations that you felt like you were disrespected, and then at the same time you struck back and showed those people that they were wrong?
Well, one of my favorite memories was when I was already world number 1 female player in the world, and I got invited finally to an elite tournament in Spain, in Bilbao. I think 1987. Anatoly Karpov, the legendary world champion, was one of the players. Several other top 10 players were in the field, and I was invited to play. And one of those top 10 players, in fact, in his peak, he was number 3 in the world. Even during that tournament, he was still number 6, Ljubojević, who is a very dynamic personality and player. And he was kind of objecting in the media, Spanish media, before the tournament that he's questioning the organizers that they inviting women to such a elite tournament. And I was facing him in the second round of that competition. I was very pleased to be able to give me my answer to his doubt, to his question on the chessboard. I'll be happy to show you that end of that game, how that came about. Well, I like to settle those kind of debates on the chessboard. And this is what happened in our game in 1987. Check, f7, king takes f7, f5. I'm continuing with my attack. He retreated with his king to g8. Pawn took on g6. He also took h to g6. And I came with my queen to attack him. Queen f6, threatening to check in the corner on h8. He came with his queen to h7, protecting the pawn on g6 as well as the corner square. And my final move, rook g2, he had no response to, he resigned. That was my ultimate response to his objection of inviting me to that elite tournament.
On top of fighting the system and the people in sort of a figurative sense, you also faced like actual sexual harassment, dangerous situations, which you talk about in your book. Or do you want to tell us about that at all?
Yeah, unfortunately, some people went even beyond nasty comments from that women don't belong in chess or making sexual hints in words towards me during chess games or situations. But the worst of it came when I was still just 12 years old and I was competing in a tournament. One day after my game, I was walking back with my dad and my coach, leisurely walking and chatting, and I had to badly use the bathroom. So I told my dad and my coach, let me run ahead to our building where we were staying. And as that was happening, so I'm running ahead, I noticed that somebody who I've seen at the tournament venue, a spectator, was following me. So I'm running up the stairs and he's following me and he's shouting after me. And next thing I know, he is pushing me next to the rails of the third floor balcony and is trying to, sexually kiss me and touch me and everything, And he's like, 6 foot tall, much bigger than me. It was super scary. And I was resisting. I was trying to gain time that I knew my father and my coach would catch up soon enough, but I had to hold off for a couple minutes. I don't know how long it exactly took. It certainly felt like an eternity. In the meantime, I'm looking down the balcony, third floor balcony, and I'm saying, oh my God, this is not how I want to die. He's threatening to push me off, and because I'm resisting. So it was like a crazy situation. And luckily, when he started to hear their footsteps, he ran away and I never seen him again. Yeah, that was a really, really scary moment that I had to overcome. And then, of course, I was kind of scared for years after that. I was more cautious than before.
Did you tell them in that moment?
I was trying to a bit downplay it because my parents were rather protective as it was. And they told me about situations of other girls that they were sexually, harassed or assaulted or even raped. Right? So to make sure, be careful. I was still also in the middle of the tournament. I didn't want it to be the reaction, okay, so let's go home. You cannot play like this. I wanted to make sure I can finish the tournament. I told them kind of downplaying it a bit for those reasons. And obviously it affected me for definitely quite some time afterwards.
And you say you were 12.
I was 12, but I was very well developed. Yeah. I was, I was almost as well developed as I'm today. So
was that after the tournament, or
no? So during.
It was during, so you had to go play games afterwards.
So
I was in the middle of the tournament, like another 6 games or so.
Oh my gosh!
So you were mature enough to understand that you needed to play it cool, but you probably also told them, like, hey, this guy, like, was being annoying, right? And then
well, it's more than annoying, you know. He's been being aggressive and scary.
Yeah. But then to have to go play games right after that too and bring your best and try.
Well, luckily I had the night to compose myself.
Yeah.
This was after, it was back in those days we played one game a day.
Yeah. Well, they still do in professionally high level. It's just here in US.
Right.
Yeah.
So at least I had a night, you know, maybe 20 hours, let's say, to compose myself and recover. And obviously it was a tough night.
That just shows how incredibly strong you were inside as a fighter, because it's like, one thing is experience that, another thing is to make a conscious decision not to make a big deal of it, because it's better practically for your situation, for your competition. And also probably, I mean, as a girl, you would have to talk to your father about it. It's not necessarily very, like, comfortable, right? It's a delicate thing. Yeah,
it was definitely very delicate. Also, I didn't want him to be right, because he warned me that, you know, you have to be careful with guys, you know, be on the alert all the time, you know. And I always thought, no, you know, he's overcautious, overprotective, you know. Yeah. So I didn't want him at that time, you know, felt I didn't want him to be right, that I told you so, you know.
Yeah.
And luckily, you know, they came just on time, that nothing really tragic happened.
Later on, you also became a world champion for women. You holded that title for a while until you had to give it up because you were pregnant with your son. What was the most challenging for you at that time?
Well, I won the title in 1996, and in those days, the World Championship cycle was 2 years, so they were supposed to have announced 6 months prior to 2 years being up who my opponent is and where and when the venue of the match is. Unfortunately, they failed to do so, didn't put too much effort in finding sponsorship for the Women's World Championship, and I decided that I'm not gonna just wait around forever. My first husband and I decided to start a family. So I got pregnant, and by the time in the end of 1998, they decided to announce that, finally we found sponsorship, and we'd like the match to take place in China. And also the prize fund that they offered was half of what was stipulated in the FIDE regulations. So they were breaking two of their own rules, in that the prize was half, and then the other stipulation was that the World Championship match supposed to take place in a neutral country, not in the country of either of the participants, and my opponent was Chinese, would have been Chinese. So that's also another one. And then the most important one, obviously, was that I was due to give birth to my firstborn at the end of March. I was telling them, and they set the match to be held in April. I told them I need a couple months to recover from childbirth, and they said, nope, we cannot do that. You have to play. It's time to play. It's already late. Well, that was their fault that the match was delayed, and they didn't find the sponsorship on a timely fashion. They took my title away because I said, sorry, I cannot play within a couple weeks after giving birth. The ironic part was that yet they let that a match happen. They replaced me by Galyamova. And they were playing in July. So they gave them several months to prepare for the match. Basically, that's how I got my title given away.
Oh my gosh. And you also had you talk about in your book how FIDE was awarding 100 extra rating points to women, except you, right?
So that was another one of the craziest stories, I think, in the history of chess. In 1986, I was number 1 ranked female player in the world, and the Soviet Chess Federation didn't like the fact that their champions, like Mayachi Burdanidze and other top players, all of a sudden are not on the top. because they were dominating women's chess all throughout the history up to that point. They were saying that it's easier to gain rating points against men, which is kind of ridiculous. But that was their argument, that because I'm playing against men and therefore I'm collecting easy rating points. And they decided that they just give a nice Christmas gift to all women, 100 rating points, but me. But ultimately, it was politically motivated, that they wanted, the Soviets wanted their players like Maja Ljubojević to be back on the top, because they felt, that how is it possible that a non-Soviet is number one in the world? That was just the absolute craziest thing. Imagine that everybody has to run a 100-meter dash, but I have to start at the 100-meter line while others at the 80 or the 90. It was just the craziest thing. And in fact, that's what eventually motivated me to start playing for the Women's World Championship title, to show them that no, there is no difference who you play a man or a woman. The chessboard still has 64 squares. The chess pieces move still identically. It's about whether you make good moves or bad moves. And that's why eventually I decided to play and win the Women's World Championship as well.
Yeah, even if they have those extra 100 rating points, it doesn't matter if you are still going to beat them.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, even once they gave the 100 points to everybody, I was still number 3 in the world, even with the 100. It just has to show how far ahead I was of the other women players at that time.
Do you feel like, that example, as well as the fact that, FIDE wouldn't let you fight to maintain your title, but then they postponed the match for someone else. Do you feel like a lot of it was maybe because you were digging your heels in and kind of fighting against them and they were sort of out to get you in a way? Or do you feel like it was more like the 100 rating point was more like this Soviet influence and, you were already at the top and I don't know. You don't have to answer.
Because Hungary was also a Soviet state.
Not as much as by the 70s and the 80s, not as much as people would assume. I think a lot less so than some of the other countries, maybe like Bulgaria or Poland. I think we were the most independent, if you want to say, from the Soviet bloc countries. And but to answer your question, in Hungary, indeed, I think a lot of it was to show me that because I'm a rebel, because I'm not doing as being told, they wanted to punish me. Like, for example, withholding my passport for several years in my most developmental years, or not letting me represent Hungary in the Men's World Championship. It was, more specific towards me. And as crazy as it sounds, and as I write about it in my book as well, believe it or not, the Hungarian Chess Federation was supporting the Soviet Chess Federation in giving the 100 free rating points to everyone but me, which is quite ridiculous. But on the FIDE side, I think it was more political in the sense that they wanted to please the Soviets, who were quite a bit, I think, had quite a bit of influence on the World Chess Federation. Yeah, I think it's both.
You fought against them. Did that lead to any let's say,
justice?
Yeah, any justice? Did you feel like you got...
Well, 1988 was actually a key year in my life and as well as my family's, because that was the first time my sisters and I made up the Hungarian national team at the Chess Olympiad, represented our country along with Ildikó Mádl. Up to that point, the Soviet women won all the Chess Olympiads that they participated in. And when we defeated them and won for the first time the Chess Olympiad, it was a major sensation, and that kind of all of a sudden, from being the black sheep in Hungary, we became the Golden Girls, like literally overnight. As we won the championship, we got home at the airport. There was a large crowd of people celebrating, our victory. And all of a sudden, pretty much all of those difficulties and challenges and roadblocks were gone, like overnight. So that was kind of an absolutely key moment that chess Olympiad.
In literal and figurative way, you're the first woman to show that it's possible to beat men in chess, that women can compete equally with men in chess. But you were also a trailblazer for your own family, for your own sisters. How was it like the dynamics between you and like, obviously it was for them seeing you achieve all these milestones was very different from you who were on your own, and you were an example for them.
My sisters are quite a bit younger than I am, and I remember the days helping my mom changing their diapers, and I remember teaching them the first steps in chess, and then the thousands of hours that followed that I was teaching them the in and out of the game. And obviously through the times when we were part of the national team of Hungary and we mutually helped each other, to the days when at the World Championship, Judith was my assistant to help in my preparations. It kind of evolved over the years from I was the big sister and I was helping the little ones through the times when obviously they developed to be great chess players on their own rights, and they were helping me back, and we became colleagues. It was a big help for all three of us that we had somebody to practice with and consult with and analyze with, be companions to each other at various chess competitions. In fact, one of the most memorable part of that was after we started winning the chess Olympiads for Hungary, that we were challenged by numerous countries' national teams, Bulgaria as we were called, were playing against different countries like Greece, for example, the Greek national team, or Slovenia, or some other countries. And it was really amazing that we actually, as three sisters, were able to compete with and defeat the national teams of different countries, such as Greece.
You talk in your book a little bit about your father's kind of teaching style. And he was obviously your first coach. He introduced you to the game, and he started by, very simply like introducing each piece individually to you. And he had a very unique way of teaching you and keeping you excited with the game. And then you kind of took over that role for your sisters. Did you kind of copy and paste your dad's teaching style to them and his sort of methodologies, or did you have your own way of going about that?
Well, obviously I learned a lot from my father because just by living it and improving through it. But because I was already a better chess player and more knowledgeable on the technical sense, obviously I could teach my sisters more, simply because by the time my sisters even started playing, I was already a master level player, while my father was always remained an amateur player.
Mm-hmm. On the outside, everybody saw you guys as this powerhouse, but obviously when we talk about sisterhood, there is inherently this rivalry, sometimes healthy, sometimes not healthy. And did you definitely there must have been some emotions between you guys, and the world from outside would always compare you between each other. Do you feel like that affected your own emotional state and maybe the dynamics between you?
Not very much, to be honest, and that's largely because I'm so much older than my sisters. Basically, I was already number one. I was very successful before Judith came on the scene. And I was just very, very happy for her that she's able to take all my dreams, even the next step further, to become a top 10 player. And it's largely simply because she did not have to fight a fight. Basically, I paved the road. Not only that I had all those struggles that we mentioned, but also it psychologically was very difficult because, let's say, the 100-point story, right? When they gave every woman 100 points but me. I never knew when the next punishment's gonna come. And sometimes that unknown, that fear of how I'm gonna get punished next is even worse than the actual punishment. She didn't have to go through any of those obstacles. It's starting from the fact that my parents were more experienced in hiring the right coaches, to the fact that she had an in-house coach in me anytime, to the fact that she didn't have to go through the fights that my father and I had to go through with the chess authorities. But basically everything was already paved, red carpet, pretty much in every way. That's why there was really no rivalry. And then I retired relatively early.
I think you moved to States around 30, right? And that's kind
I
of
moved in 94, so at age 25.
25.
Yeah.
And by 30, you're already semi-retired somewhere, right?
Basically, yes. Yes, 99, yes.
Your sister Judith was the one who broke the overall record of becoming the youngest grandmaster in the world. She literally broke the record of Bobby Fischer. But speaking of Bobby Fischer, you are the one who actually got to spend quite a lot of time with him on the chessboard. He, in fact, lived in Hungary for 8 years, I think you mentioned. And some of that time that you spent him, you actually worked on the famous game known as the famous variant of chess known as Chess 960 or Fischer Random. So you assisted Bobby in creating Fischer Random. How was that like?
Meeting Bobby Fischer was, of course, a dream come true. Growing up in the 1970s, nobody knew where he was hiding. Nobody knew will he defend his title in 1975 or not. So obviously he was like a legend, a myth, you know. After I got that message that he'd like to meet me, I drove to Yugoslavia, into a little town where he was hiding. And in fact, I was the one recommending him that why don't you move to Budapest, which is a lot more metropolitan and a vibrant city than the little place he was kind of hiding, basically. Soon enough, he moved to Budapest, and he made it his home for about 8 years. And especially during the beginning parts of that, I was his usual companion, and we had countless dinners together, and we played countless Fischer random games. The first time we played with Bobby, we only played with the 8 pawns, and he used to call it shuffle chess. And basically the first 8 moves, mandatory moves of the game, were to set up the 8 pieces behind the pawns on the first rank on each side. And after that, we would actually make moves with all 32 pieces on the board. We would start making the traditional moves, let's say. As such, there were no restrictions. We did not have to have symmetry between the pieces when they start. The bishops even could have been on 2 bishops on both dark or light squares, and there was no option to castle. So we played many games like that, experimenting. And then, he started to think that he'd like to keep the rules as close to traditional chess as possible. But he didn't like the idea that even by then, we're talking about the early 1990s, there was too much chess opening theory, and he felt that it was taking too much away from the essence of the game as to memorizing opening moves rather than thinking and having a fight between 2 intellectuals. He went to talk to some mathematicians and find out how many possible starting positions there would be if we restrict the starting positions to symmetry between the 2 sides, to have the bishops on opposite color squares, and yet incorporating castling into the game with forcing the king to start between the 2 rooks. And the answer came back, there are still 960 different starting positions. So then we started experimenting with that, and he was very happy that 960 is a large enough number that no human can possibly analyze all of that and yet alone remember all of those analyses. Hence the birth of Chess 960 that he later on started promoting. But basically, I'm proud to be part of that finalizing of the rules that actually people play with today. So it was a very interesting part of chess history.
Where do you stand on the new trend of calling it as a Magnus random, or in other words, freestyle chess.
A new format of a chess event that is being championed by Magnus Carlsen. This event is called Freestyle Chess.
Being part of developing those final rules with Bobby and knowing how passionate and outspoken he was about Fischer Random or Chess 960, I think it's a bit offensive of changing the name. I think Chess 960 is probably the proper name for it because it also reflects what it's about. I think not mentioning Bobby's contribution to it enough or properly doesn't do justice to the history of that chess variant.
It's crazy to think that already back then, early 90s, there was already this issue of countless openings, and that chess is not just about openings, right? It's you just want to show your skill on the board, and that's what this variant allows. I think they came down to 930? It's like the playable positions. I think they analyzed it nowadays with the engine. Like there are definitely some number of starting positions that are lost for black from this.
Well, as far as I understand, I'm being told that it's like 0708 by the engine. I wouldn't call that lost necessarily, to be quite honest. I mean, maybe between engines, maybe, but humanly, I think that's still playable. Yeah. Although probably it's ideal to take those out of the equation of the 960. Yeah.
Throughout your career, you played with literally every single champion at the time, countless world champions, former world champions, and the potential future world champions at the time you were playing them. Who was your most challenging opponent for you personally? Maybe the style or their character. Was there something that you would find always hard to face?
Yeah, I was very fortunate indeed that I played practically all the world champions I could. I played from Smyslov to Tal to Karpov and including Bobby Fischer. But actually the most challenging opponent for me was Vladimir Kramnik because he has such a very similar style to mine, but he does it much better than I do. So for that reason, I was not very successful against him.
You mentioned you had a rather positional style, so then there was similar, his was also positional, but was it like a positional, as they say, positional squeeze, like kind of with the pieces on the board, he would always predict your plans, whatever you wanted to play?
I felt that, I like to build up my game kind of slowly but surely before I start an attack. And I think so does he. Of course, in his later years, he became a lot more dynamic, but that was a very conscious effort that he worked on. But back in his earlier days and when I played him, he was just understanding the game better than I did.
And these days, Kramnik retired from competitive chess, and his new fight is also a huge fight to be against cheating, right? He claims himself the Robin Hood of chess, of cheating in chess. Many people, though, think that he's taking it to a sort of extreme way, especially when it comes to online chess, which is a completely different topic. We're not necessarily going to get into it. But do you feel like he's doing the right thing in a way of cheating is a huge problem, and this is the meaning of his career right now, as of these days?
I think it's a little bit debatable whether he's going a bit too far or not. I think there are two things. First of all, as you said, online chess is one thing, over the board is another thing. With that said, I have to make it clear that cheating in chess is a huge problem. But I think so it is a huge problem when some people got accused falsely without proofs. So this is a very difficult subject. I think it needs to be discussed. It needs to be prevented as much as possible. But I think it's also important that people don't get falsely accused without proper and definite proof.
I have a school, my chess school, online school where there are a lot of students. It's for adult improvers. Every week I host these live shows where I let my students challenge me for a game. And believe it or not, but almost every single week, there is at least one person who is cheating against me. And why I know it? Because they are 500 or 1,000 or 1,500, and they're playing like a solid master level. I usually win in a time scramble when I'm down certain material, and then they can no longer like compete with the pace. Then usually what I do is that I compliment them. Definitely, ironically, say that this is amazing because I cannot accuse people publicly without the proof. And I sent this game to chess.com, fair play. And whenever it comes out as a positive that they were cheating, I confront them in person and I tell them, do you want to tell me anything? I know you were cheating. I can give you a second chance if you admit and apologize. But never they admit. And interestingly, I've noticed another pattern that usually people, they only cheat against me. And the reason so is that I think they want to impress me. So they feel insecure that I'm going to judge them, that they're chess, and they want to show me how much they have improved. They don't cheat in order to win prizes. They just want to, validation from me. But yet it is wrong. And when I see it, I cannot accuse them even when I know that they're cheating until I actually got the proof.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem, unfortunately. But there are two sides of it, right? So it's not good in either way if it's being ignored, that when people cheat, but it's also not good when the innocent people are also being accused without proof.
Especially when it comes to kids these days, because it's so... it's such a fine line. You can, like, any up-and-coming young chess player can be just
ruin their reputation.
There's a part in your book where you talk about Mikhail Tal. You eventually went on to play him in competitive in tournaments and things.
Yes.
So, what was that like? I mean, maybe tell us a little bit about the first interaction and then how that translated into games later.
Sure. One of my favorite early memories in chess was when I was playing against the legendary Mikhail Tal, who is known as also the magician from Riga for his brilliant chess playing style. And when we first met was in Moscow, 1982, and I was visiting an international tournament that was taking place there at the time. He was in the middle of his game. There was those big demonstration boards in the room behind the boards, and in between his moves, he was walking outside and with a cigarette. And during one of those walks, I had the dream that, oh my God, if I could play just one game with him. My mother had the courage to go up to him and ask him that, would you be willing to play with my daughter? That's her dream. To my shocking surprise, he said, yes, of course. So we thought, okay, his game may be going on a few more hours. Maybe he'll tell us another day on the day off when he doesn't have to play. Unexpectedly, within half an hour, he was out there. Apparently, he offered a draw in his game against Grandmaster Vaganyan, who accepted it, and he was out there. He says, I'm ready to play you. That was like amazing, and in fact, the first game we played, I was attacking him and I was sacrificing several pieces, and the game ended up in a draw with perpetual checks. So I was just so happy, one of my happiest moments up to that time. That inspired me actually later on when I became a champion, and I met with other young and upcoming chess players. I was trying to inspire them and give them the encouragement and good memories. And of course, later on, I faced him also in regular competitions several times. He's one of the truest gentlemen of chess I've ever known.
It's nice to know that there were good men out there who were supportive.
Absolutely. And, when I say that there is a lot of sexism and misogyny in chess, while that's true, there are obviously a lot of, in fact, more and more so wonderful men colleague chess players as well.
When he decided to stop his game in order to get a chance to play against you, and that gesture of kind of give to the community, gratitude and inclusion, do you think that is what kind of inspired you later to create your nonprofit organization and your institution for chess excellence, helping other chess players, female chess players?
I think giving back is very important, and that's what I'm trying to do. And Also through my book, Rebel Queen, I'm trying to inspire the next generation of people in chess, especially girls. But also through the foundation, we're trying to raise more visibility, give more opportunities for young chess players, especially girls. I think it's really important to give back.
The foundation is the Spice, right?
No.
That's different.
No,
okay.
No, that's different. Susan Polgar Foundation is something I started in 2002. That's a nonprofit to promote chess with all its educational and social benefits, especially for girls, while the Susan Polgar Institute for Chess Excellence, that has been always in partnership with the university, first at Texas Tech, then I moved it to Webster University, where it's still housed to this day. Even though I'm no longer the director of the day-to-day operations, I'm still Director Emeritus of SPICE, and Lim Le, the Vietnamese Grandmaster, my former student and alum of SPICE, is the current director and head coach of the program.
I actually just realized, don't move, we have this one over here. I'm just going to show it.
Oh, Bobby.
I'm going to put here, maybe this, and it's for the last two words, he's going to be here. The book. Yeah. We also have Emily. That's Mikhail Tal behind you.
Oh.
Yes, there you go.
It's Anatoly Karpov also.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's interesting. There is one thing that I don't think it's worth talking, but we discussed it yesterday. It's a different fight. It's a different subject. You represent women. For me, again, as a edutainer, as a I do content creation, but I also try to teach adults in a form of entertainment, but also make it educational. For me, the biggest kind of like frustration comes from the students that come to me and say, "Hey, Dina, I'm 35 years old, 40 years old, I am 500, and I want to become a Grandmaster. Help me."
Like we had one of those last night, do you remember?
Yeah, and that's actually Jay. He works here. He's one of the very the most involved coaches, and he has this dream. Your message literally says, if you have a dream, you need to pursue it.
But you have to be realistic at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot just say that I want to be 7 foot tall, because you're not going to be, right? It's within some limits, right? You cannot say, you're going to fly, all of a sudden, So you have to somewhat have realistic expectations. Like I was saying last night, right? That the lady, I don't know, she looked like she was in her 50s, let's say.
Yeah, she's, I think she's of your age.
So as I said, and she's 500 or whatever, or 1,000. 900. So
she actually started from zero, just like the other story.
Right.
Jace, her husband, Nicole, she's also a very active, she works for the Chess Center here. We are at the Charlotte Chess Center. Shout out to them. And Jay and Nicole, they would be flattered if we talked about them. But so Jay, Nicole is 900. She discovered chess 2 years ago, and she got passionate because her husband is passionate.
Right.
Yeah, and she's the one to ask you a question.
Yeah, so I mean, even if it's 1900, right? Yeah. Like the husband, it's very hard from 1900 to become a Grandmaster. It's a long way to go. As I like to say, it takes 10% of the work to get 90% of the result. Right? Because with 1900, you're probably in the upper 1% of people who play chess, of hundreds of millions of people.
Yeah.
But that extra 10% is 90% of the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what people don't realize. Basically, a 1900 will play a competent game of chess, right? It's not easy to beat them, even for a Grandmaster. It's not obvious. But those nuances to beat masters, to beat Grandmasters, is very difficult, because you have to be very good in endgame. You have to calculate well. You have to understand strategy well. You have to put everything together. And it's not just the technical knowledge, but it's handling your nerves. It's managing your time. It's being able to sleep after a loss. It's having your self-confidence, know how to predict your opponent's likely opening choice. And the list goes on and on and on. And a lot of it comes with experience, and it takes a lot of time, like literally. By the time you're 50 years old, you're 55 years old, I can tell you from experience, you have less energy typically, you have more responsibilities. Most people need to have a job, and that's not necessarily to improve their own chess, right? So they just don't have the time or the circumstances because, let's say somebody has a regular job, working 8 hours a day, plus getting to that job, getting home from that job, they are beat by the time they get home after a long day. And how can they expect, after having a normal life, in the evening and on the weekend, even if let's suppose they give up on everything else, on spending time with their family or other hobbies, and then you have to be physically fit, right? That's also part of becoming a successful chess player, to go to the gym or whatever your choice of sport, to be in good physical shape. Most people just don't have that opportunity later in age. And that's why kids have the advantage. When they are 6-year-old, 8-year-old, they are being taken care of, right? They don't need to worry what they'll eat, how they'll have a roof above their heads. They don't have a husband or wife. They are just free to focus on if they like chess or whatever other passion they may have. And that's a huge advantage compared to adults when they don't have those life responsibilities. And I think that's why it's really important for people to set realistic goals, to set high goals, but they have to be realistic at the same time.
The biggest question for me as a woman in chess, for us as a society, for females fighting for all these battles, can a woman become a chess world champion?
I believe so, absolutely. It takes a lot of work, and I think I'm hope that I will still see it in my lifetime.
Nice.
So inspirational, Susan. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to have you here, and the story's been incredible. For everyone watching, definitely check out the Rebel Queen book. It's if you want to hear more about Susan's incredible life, all of the challenges and fights she went through, and to hear more about some of the stories she touched on today. Where else can people find you? Where should they follow you?
Well, I'm on all the different social media outlets like Facebook and X and Instagram. So also my website is just like my name, susanpolgar.com, where you can learn more about what I do, and as well as my foundation that is a 501c3 nonprofit.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure being with you.
Beautiful. That's awesome. I think we can finish that on that. Those few words were amazing.